Hello. So, Monday the 19th of July has come and gone. It was the day so many had been waiting for, the final lifting of all restrictions. But I wonder if it actually feels any different to you. The rising COVID-19 infection rates around the country, including locally, mean that the end of all the social restrictions we've been living under has made many people feel more concerned and anxious rather than full of delight at our newfound freedoms. In church, as we look to care for one another, we'll still need to keep our distance, and most will still be wearing masks and singing very quietly, if at all. And I guess that for most of us, it just adds to the weariness we've been feeling. This has been going on for so long, and there really doesn't seem to be any end in sight. For anyone facing that alone, how tough it is. As a church, we shouldn't be facing it alone because we have one another. And an incident from the life of David gives us a pointer to how we can continue to support one another. We're turning today not to one of David's Psalms, but to an incident recorded in 1 Samuel. David wasn't yet king. In fact, he was on the run from Saul, who was determined to kill him. He had about 600 men with him, but they had to be constantly on the move, trying to keep one step ahead of Saul. Let me read 1 Samuel 23, verses 14 to 18. David stayed in the wilderness strongholds and in the hills of the desert of Ziph. Day after day Saul searched for him, but God did not give David into his hands. While David was at Horesh in the desert of Ziph, he learned that Saul had come out to take his life. And Saul's son Jonathan went to David at Horesh and helped him to find strength in God. "Don't be afraid," he said. "My father Saul will not lay a hand on you. You shall be king over Israel, and I will be second to you. Even my father Saul knows this." The two of them then made a covenant before the Lord. Then Jonathan went home, but David remained at Horesh. I think it is maybe one of the loveliest phrases in the Bible. Jonathan went to David at Horesh and helped him to find strength in God. Not just that Jonathan helped David, though of course that's what he wanted to do. Not just that Jonathan prayed for David, though I'm sure that he did. He came to David and then pointed him to God, helped David to see his circumstances with God's eyes and to reconnect with God, to find new strength from him. So what does that mean? It wasn't just that Jonathan said some nice, pious sounding things. "Don't be afraid," he said. "My father Saul will not lay a hand on you. You shall be king over Israel, and I will be second to you." Jonathan reminded David of God's promises. Yes, Saul was trying to kill David, but God had promised that David would be king, so Saul couldn't possibly succeed. And Jonathan did it, despite the fact that David becoming king would mean that Jonathan, Saul's son and heir, wouldn't be king. Supporting David had a big cost attached to it for Jonathan. Of course, the circumstances for us are different. We don't have a homicidal king rampaging around trying to kill us. But in a lesser way, I'm sure that some people do feel like David. Coronavirus has been attacking us for 18 months, and it seems that whatever we do, it is still after us. We don't know where we can turn to for security. What we need is just the same as David needed. And Jonathan's response reminds us that supporting each other isn't just about being nice, though of course that's important. It isn't just about giving someone a hug, though when we're able to do that again, it is going to be a huge blessing. Most of all, we can help one another find strength in God. And like Jonathan, that might mean reminding one another of God's great promises in the Bible. Think of Hebrews 13, 5-6. God has said, "Never will I leave you, never will I forsake you." So we say with confidence, "The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?" Think of Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. It might not always feel as if God is with us, helping us. It might not always feel as if God is at work for our good. We need one another to remind us of these great promises and to help us to hold on to them, even when the going is tough. We need to help one another find strength in God. Of course, it doesn't just mean reeling off a verse and leaving it at that. We will do it with sensitivity, with love, with prayer. We will do it along with a hug when we're allowed to. Sometimes helping someone to find strength in God will involve challenging them about something in their life, and doing that can be very uncomfortable. But even then, the best thing I can do for another Christian who is struggling is to point them to God, to remember his promises, to claim them for themselves. And I know that is what I need. Throughout my ministry, I have appreciated times when someone else at Christ Church has asked me how I'm doing, has shown their love for me, has prayed for me. But most of all, I've appreciated it when they've reminded me about God, about his love for me, about his good purposes, when they've helped me find strength in God. It's what our prayer ministry team do, which is why theirs is such a valuable ministry. But it is actually something that all of us can do, all of us should do. Life will continue to be challenging. And even when the current pandemic is past, life will still be challenging. We live in a fallen world, and all of us get caught up in the brokenness of it. We feel in the position that David was in. We all need a Jonathan. So this week, can you help someone else at Christ Church to find strength in God?